Hey, everybody, we're back. I'm Susan Linder, your host of the Innovation Storytellers Show, and I'm absolutely thrilled to go across the pond today. I'll be speaking with Ian Wright, who is the founder and CEO of the Disruptive Innovators Network, which is a forum that Ian established back in 2018 for leaders wanting to understand and respond to disruptive threats. And to take advantage of innovation opportunities. And he has worked at the senior executive level as Deputy Chief Executive Director for the last 20 years, and most recently at Housemark, the UK social housing sector's data and business improvement organization. But his expertise really lies in building cross-sector business experience programs and leaders networks. And I'm really interested in diving into building communities around innovation, of which Ian is an expert. So he's developed close partnerships with the likes of Apple and Google and Microsoft, Amazon, John Lewis, IKEA, Telefonica, BT, just to name a few. So Ian, welcome to the Innovation Storyteller Show.
Absolutely. And hi, Susan. Hi, all the listeners out there. I'm delighted to be asked. I don't normally get asked on sort of shows like this. I obviously don't get asked back, but hey, does that matter? But thank you for that very, very warm introduction, and delighted because you pulled together two of the things I'm really interested in. One of which is innovation. The second, I love a good story. So I'm delighted to sort of chat with you today and hopefully share some insights into our world.
Yeah. So before Ian and I got on the call, for those of you watching on YouTube, I was showing Ian my super podcasting mug that says "You're on mute," which is normally how I come onto every Teams meeting and I wind up telling a story, and yet I'm still on mute. So I'm unmuting myself constantly, as most of us are in the world of Zoom and Teams and WebEx today. But you also decided to bring your A game with your shirt, Ian. And what does it say?
Am I allowed to say this before the
Yes, you are, absolutely.
yeah, there you go. For those that's seeing us on YouTube, I'll provide a sort of a bit of context for it though, Susan. It says I'm a bit shit sometimes, and over the many years I've had what we in the UK call annual performance appraisals, and I've gathered some of the feedback that's been given with me that was designed to motivate me, and I've done useful things with it, such as I don't need a disruptive Ian in my organization, so I got that turned into my Twitter handle. And obviously this shirt was something that said I wasn't always as good as I thought I was.
Yeah, that 360 review is the worst when you actually get back to center and you have to look at yourself, right? That's the worst part of the performance appraisal. And we're in that season right now, right? We're in this January timeframe where everybody's doing performance reviews and it's agony.
Well, it certainly is. I always found it sort of interesting. It was an annual sort of review, and we were asked to go back sort of 12 months. I'm lucky if I can remember what happened in the last 12 hours. If I'm
Right. That's why that second cup of coffee is so critical. So, Ian, I was excited to talk to you. We were put together by a mutual friend, Chris Breswick, who's also been on the show before. So please go ahead and check out Chris's interview with me here. And we are talking about today, we're going to be talking about establishing innovation communities and how important it is for innovators and disruptors, people who are change makers, are catalysts for invoking a new way of thinking about something, how important it is to have a community of like-minded, like-spirited thinkers around them in order to get the support and inspiration and problem solving that we need from one another. And I'm excited to dive into that topic. But first, Ian, I want to know how you got here. How did you get to this point of starting the Disruptive Innovators Network? Because that is no small shakes.
No, it isn't. And I think like a lot of people, I spent 35 years in sort of the corporate environment, working and running a variety of businesses. I had an absolutely great time, learned from sort of so many people, but I was always curious. I remain curious. The older I get, the more I realize, actually, I don't know lots of things. So that sort of inspires me to sort of go out there and try and find answers to some of the big issues and problems. But working in organizations can be quite sort of insular, and I was always sort of curious about, well, if we're not very good at this, who is good at this, and what can we sort of learn from them? And I suppose I can take you back to one sort of time whereby, so I was sat in my office, and we've been given some sort of targets to hit, and I thought, I'm going to have to come up with a new offer, a new service here. So I'm a great believer in experiential learning, going inside organizations, talking to the leaders there, developing connections, and developing relations with them. And so I was sat there, and I just composed this email to the other members within this membership organization I was working in at the time, and said, would you like to come inside this brilliant business? In the UK, it was John Lewis, probably the equivalent of Macy's in the US there. Yep. Would you like to come and spend the day inside Macy's, find out how they deliver such brilliant customer service, deliver all the products, get all the marketing right, the comms, how they develop the people, retain the talent, all of these sort of things. And within a week, I had 20 CEOs sort of write back to me and say, yes, we'd love to come and spend the day inside John Lewis. And I thought, wow, I'm onto something here. The slight flaw in my plan was, I think you can guess where this is going. I hadn't told John Lewis. In fact, I hadn't even asked John Lewis whether they would let us in. But one of the things I am acutely aware of as I've gone in my life, actually, most people are givers. And if you ask people, most people will say, yeah, I'd love to help you. And as I say, there's always sort of connections. I'm a great believer in paying things forward. So, my network is full of people who I admire and respect, who we've done things together. And actually, I don't expect anything back in return, but actually sometimes there's, people out there can genuinely help you. And so eventually I managed to get in touch with John Lewis, and we went and had a fantastic day. Everybody loved it. The business itself enjoyed doing a show and tell, because they don't often get asked to sort of talk about their work kind of thing. So it worked for sort of both parties on that. And from that sort of, I've started to build up more and more, as I say, these experiential learnings. And that formed a big part of what we now do, which was, how do we go and learn from others? And the key bit of it is, how do we then transfer that knowledge back into our organization? Because if you're working in different sectors, you might have different concepts or different customers and things like that. But the more I've done this, the more I've realized actually we're all working on very, very similar problems. Whether this is about how we change our businesses to meet climate change, to get more customers, to bounce back from COVID, whatever these sort of challenges are, most people are going through those issues. So the Disruptive Innovators Network basically is a membership community of like-minded leaders at all sorts of levels, from CEO to C-suite to operational level, who just say, actually, we can do things a bit differently. We can do things a bit better, and ultimately, we can deliver better services to our customers. And in the case of the UK social housing, I see my members being very much as stewards of their businesses, because a lot of them are charities, and a lot of the point is, actually, I want to build and grow this business, but I'm going to hand it on to somebody else, and I want to make sure I'm handing on a business that's going to be fit to serve the communities. So a bit of context around it. This is we're a big business in the UK. It's about £30 billion a year sort of turnover, 10 billion of sort of capital investment coming in, but we've been quite a hidden sector. But we actually provide just over 4 million homes across the UK. That is a big part, a big sort of set of communities. And most of the areas in which we work are some of the most challenging neighbourhoods and communities in the whole of the country. And I think, as we were sort of talking earlier, what all of us will have in common on this show, hopefully, is that we live in a house. I don't think there'll be many cave dwellers out there. I hope not, anyhow. And the house, which you turn into a home, provides so many things to allow you to be your best. And what my members are trying to do is provide that sort of environment, so people have got safe, warm, secure, affordable homes that allows them to go about and live their everyday lives. And innovation is going to play a key part in keeping up with the expectations that people have of where we now sort of live. Because we don't live in an isolated bubble. A lot of your listeners, if they're working in the corporate world, would be providing technology or finance or retail services to customers, and they will know as much as anybody how those needs and expectations will change over time, and sometimes it's quite hard, particularly in a business that's been around a long time, to still think like a startup or think like an entrepreneur and not be disrupted. So I wanted to set up this community to bring like-minded people together, to share experiences, to share insights, to avoid duplication of effort, because I do see lots of reinvention of the wheel, and a lot of those wheels are square. And I think that's a complete waste, and we'd like to sort of do those things better. So we're 6 years old, I come up for our 6th year, and we're, I would say, quite a thriving community. And that was the sole purpose for, arriving at where I'm at.
And yeah, but you didn't start off with this intention, right? Originally, of creating this community. When you were in corporate roles, looking at making changes and making shifts, there's a lot of resistance, and there can be, I should say, a lot of resistance. Some cultures are way more open. How flexible do you find the housing market as being open to receiving the work that your innovation community is working on?
It's a really good question. I mean, a lot depends on sort of the state of sort of the market and where we actually are. I mean, we're currently living through a cost of living crisis that affects all organizations. And one of the first things organizations start to do in a cash sort of crisis is we cut back on what's called discretionary spend. I don't have to spend this. And one of the things that really sort of winds me up in this stage is one of the first things to go is the learning and development budget. And I always go back to organizations and say, hang on, you've got more questions now than you've got answers that you've ever had before. And yet your route to getting those questions answered, you're cutting back on the resource around that. That doesn't seem to sort of be good business sense around this. So no, I mean, I think, I'm in a fortunate position that we're able to sort of, look at what's happening out there in the second, say, right, look at these businesses that came into fruition through other times of challenge, whether it was the financial crash, dot-com boom. So there have been some brilliant businesses that were born in those most trying of times. And what it demonstrated to me was actually we're sometimes at our most creative when we're at our most challenged. And that's what I keep saying to sort of organize our members at this moment in time. Look, this should be a good time for you, because you can start to think about your organization, look at it in a different way. I think one of the things that COVID should have done to businesses was to give them almost a blank sheet of paper to reinvent their organization and say, look, we're never going to get a better chance of this. Let's look at the things that we do and decide, is this part of our history? Actually, this is part of our heritage that we want to keep, or what's baggage that we've just been doing it and we don't really, it's not adding value to our customers. So let's drop it. And the money that we save from that, we can invest in other things as well, and that's why I'm a big sort of admirer of businesses that not everybody will like, the Airbnbs or the Ubers or the Amazons around this, but, they've done something right when they've been able to sort of get, change and disrupt a market and get so many customers who actually will use their services.
Yeah, the folks who don't like Uber are taxi and limousine companies, and the folks who don't like Airbnb are Hilton and Hyatt and Marriott, right? Those are the folks who don't like it. But what's fascinating is, when you go to these sites now and you have the opportunity to rent a whole home, right, which is called a Marriott villa, or you can now have access, like there's no way of escaping disruption. You either, watch it and crumble, or you succumb and you figure out how to improve on the disruptive innovators' work.
Well, and that's it. You've touched on the point that those sectors would not have changed and evolved. The taxi service now in this country is absolutely changed now. You've got Uber-style apps. You can pay with your phone. You're not having to look out for sort of cash and things like that. You rate each other in terms of the service. So that wouldn't have happened if those organizations hadn't come into the market. And I think one of the key traits from all of those organizations that I really admire was their ability to articulate what is a complex problem into something really, really simple. I'm a big fan of going back and sort of looking at all of the pitch decks that these companies put
started
forward.
off with, right?
Yeah, and just seeing what they were like, and in one slide, they can articulate what the problem is and what the solution is that they're going to do. And yet, when you come and work in a corporate environment, you have to wait. If you're in a board or an executive, you've got to wade through pages and pages and pages to get to it. And one of the businesses we've been privileged to sort of go into is Apple, and Apple had this brilliant sort of phrase around, any idiot can add complexity into a process, but it takes a genius to take something out. And that's their whole philosophy. If you get an Apple product, nobody's going to sit there and go through a user manual. It's basically they want you to just dive in, and they've made it that easy. So it's frictionless in terms of how you use the product, and that whole discovery learning piece is how they've built it. And I just wish more organizations were able to think through that lens.
It's fascinating. I got to make this equation with Scandinavian furniture. It's so simple, but it's because, all the joints are hidden. You don't see any glue or nails. It's getting all of that out to refining the craft. And frankly, it's why great storytelling and great communications matter when you're trying to explain innovation, because all of that gobbledygook corporate speak gets in the way of conveying an amazing new idea. And it's a detriment to adoption, scale, learning along the way, all those processes. When we don't have clear communication, that can really fumble what is otherwise a brilliant idea.
Absolutely. And I think this is part of the challenge we've got. I mean, the key phrase here is leaders, right? And the challenge leaders have got is you're at the front. You're at the front of the bus, so you're at the front of the pack. And in a lot of cases, you've got to paint a picture for people. This whole sort of seeing is believing, or believing is seen kind of thing. And therefore, you've got to be able to articulate what your vision is, or where you're looking to sort of take people. Because if you can't do that effectively, you're not necessarily going to take all of your team with you. And therefore, the ability to communicate that is absolutely, I think it's a skill. And again, I think what COVID has done, it's shone a light on what are the new skills that leaders are now going to have to gather, to acquire. Storytelling is absolutely going to be one of them. But so one of the new corporate muscles for me is the whole issue around problem solving. This is something you're going to have to train people in. You're going to have to exercise it to get it fit. But if you don't do that, how do you know you're solving the right problems in your organization?
Yeah. This is something that we talk about pretty regularly on this show too, is getting all of us around this picture, this painted picture of the future. And it is incumbent. Do you agree, Ian, that it's incumbent upon the innovator to be, I use the term the prophet inside of the organization, who's, willing and capable of bringing the rest of us along by painting a picture of the future that the rest of us can't see. I often use the analogy, Jesus was telling us about heaven, and Buddha was telling us about nirvana, right? Muhammad was telling us about a heaven that was replete with so many benefits for those who got there. And it's really challenging sometimes for leaders to communicate that untouchable. It's air sometimes in the very beginning when we're trying to take people into an innovative or a moonshot idea.
Well, absolutely. And a lot of that then comes down to trust and belief in that particular leader, because quite often, particularly when you talk to them, one-to-one or outside of the boardroom, they'll say, I really don't know where we're going to end up. I've got a vague idea, the rough direction, but as you know, an innovation journey is not a linear line. It doesn't just go like that. It squiggles and goes as you sort of learn. And if you think about a lot of the skills that you are taught at business schools and leadership academies and things like that, a lot of them I feel now are very much old world stuff. I mean, our sort of current sort of strapline is you can't use an old map to explore a new world. And so if it's a new world, you're going to have to draw it yourself, and that is going to involve a lot of experimentation, a lot of failure, falling over, getting back up again, and all of these things. And these are not things that you're necessarily taught or are actually sort of rewarded on in a normal sort of organization that's been around a while. And that's why I'm a big fan of organizations. I mean, you mentioned sort of Swedish furniture and things like that. IKEA, who obviously you have across and says one of the most admired businesses I've sort of come across in terms of the way that they go, and how their current CEO, Jesper Bergen, has led the business towards what their Planet Positive strategy is called, which is, we're going to be, we're not going to be pumping out lots of CO2 into the business. We're going to completely change it, but actually we're going to do that whilst delivering business as usual and staying in business. Because a lot of people look at the whole climate change agenda as being a cost, and that's going to hit their profits and things. But actually, he's really demonstrated very well how you can do that, and actually being climate positive can be a benefit to the business. But that takes a lot of bravery, and that comes from somebody at the most senior level in an organization. And to your point about the evangelists within organizations, innovation doesn't tend to be at a board or executive level. You don't have a chief innovation officer. You might have a chief information officer or a chief digital officer, but innovation tends to sort of sit down there. And that's hard for some people because it's very easy to get burned out. It can feel very, very lonely, particularly if you don't have sort of board sort of buy-in or executive sort of buy-in around this. And as you know, as I'm sure you've discussed with other guests before, you can end up with a lot of innovation theatre. You seem to be doing something, but actually, no, there's not really a great deal of sort of change sort of happening. And I think part of this is around the organizational design and organizational culture that you sort of work in. We've got this constant battle between organizations here who, oh, that wasn't invented here, that wasn't developed here, so therefore that can't be good for us because you don't know our business, to those organizations who are land far, far away, who think, oh, we've got to go over there and have a look at that kind of thing. And my experience is you want somewhere in between. You understand the business and your sector the best, or you should do, but actually don't be so blinkered that you can't go and look at other businesses and other leaders and actually learn from them.
I think what you're saying is fascinating. Here in the US, there are some folks who have that chief innovation officer title. What I noticed during COVID is that a lot of folks with innovation in their title lost their jobs. There was such a focus on the bottom line of meeting quarterly results, of trying to figure out how to pivot, which for me, I thought, wow, this is the perfect time for innovation teams to step up and help manage that shift if senior leaders would embrace them. Because we were all pivoting, whether you were trying to figure out how to visit your grandkids and, stick your arms through a sheet of plastic to hug your grandkids, but not actually breathe on them with dishwashing gloves on, or you were like GM that was ripping cars off the assembly line to make respirators. That is the precise moment when innovators can really shine. And yet, so many companies were short-sighted and thinking, like, I can't think about 3 to 5 years and whatever plans we were working on. My only focus is right now. And those are, top line, business line leaders, not folks who, are misperceived as pie in the sky thinkers.
Well, I mean, irrelevance is not a good business place to be, but being dead is probably even worse. And, right. As a business, you don't sort of want to be there. And I think, yes, there are times where, you've got to be in the weeds, you've got to be working in the business. But, the COVID was a prime example. We had to respond very, very quickly to some threats that we simply hadn't had any experience of. And most organizations were able to do that. Some organizations were able to thrive as a result of that. A lot of the preconceptions around how businesses needed to operate, you need to be in the office X number of hours a day, we need to see what you were doing kind of thing, were all proved, were busted sort of myths around that. But I suppose it's also about how much organizations are willing to invest in the innovation skill. Now, I think innovation is a skill. It can be taught like any other skill, you know, to run experimentations, to analyze data, to build proof of concept, to then scale what those challenges are. There's some great organizations and leaders. You mentioned Chris Bezic, he's one of them who, you know, will help organizations do this. But, you know, you'd think nothing of spending multi-millions of pounds on IT technology and implementing that in the business, and then you don't get full value out of that. And yet, you know, if we ask you to spend £500,000 on, you know, building entrepreneurs and the skills with that within the business, these are skills for life. Oh, that's a bit expensive, you know. So we value the IT equipment more than we do the actual sort of people, in my experience of what I've seen.
And that skill set, right, that helping us bridge to a new future, I think is something that innovation leaders can continue to teach organizations. And this is a culture conversation we have all the time on this show, which is how open an innovation or a culture is to failure. You know, how willing are we to receive risk in the event that we really want to embrace some kind of change that can take us to a new place. So when we came across COVID and we found organizations that were frankly more brittle than we thought, the place for those innovators was suddenly out the door. Did you find that with your community?
Yes, yeah, I can certainly sort of relate to that. And I think that's partly comes down to when you're winning, i.e., you know, you don't really learn a lot. I mean, I've seen some brilliant ideas sort of come forward and companies will push them out there. But ultimately, I mean, in a hurricane, even turkeys can fly. And
I've never heard that expression before.
And that's what happens. And you don't have the ability to sort of say, well, actually, yeah, that was just luck. I mean, I think a lot of leaders are lucky. A lot of us are lucky in what we're actually doing. We're lucky that actually we don't get found out because the layers in the business make it quite difficult. But we've heard a lot of corporate failures over the years, and a lot of that has been down to actually the whole process, the system, and the organization was foundations were built on sand, and actually you could have seen this coming. I see that more and more. We're there because actually we've just been lucky for it. But I think in terms of you know, what investment and what we should start to look at, like, I mean, there was sort of having some engagement with my members last week. There was a brilliant sort of speaker I was listening to who was basically saying, look, you know, job descriptions are absolute waste of time. You know, they're out of date within a few months of your appointment. What we now need to be looking for in terms of appointing people is their learning agility, their agility to learn at pace, because we can teach them the skills to do some of these things. And I think as we get more automation and more technology coming into businesses, you know, as leaders, and again, leaders should be at the front of the bus on this, we've got to be thinking about how does our organization sort of evolve? You know, what are humans good at? Where do they need to do that sort of work? And we're good at complex issues. We're good at dealing with empathy and, you know, the tasks that have variety in them. You know, technology is good at dealing with repetitive things around that. So that's where we should be investing our time as leaders looking at these businesses. And I'm not sure people understand what are the new skills that we're going to have to develop. One of the things that we were working on with members was around strategic foresight, i.e. the ability to forecast the future, what's coming down. And people think, oh yeah, we need a crystal ball for that. You don't. And we've worked with a brilliant futurist, Tracy Follows, who did some work with our members, basically looking at the development of weak signals, strong signals, emerging trends, mega trends, all of these sort of things that you can see that's happening in the world around you, that you can then start to piece together like a jigsaw puzzle and say, actually, yeah, there are 2 or 3 areas here who are going to affect our market, our customers, or our people. And that enables you to sort of, you know, prepare for these things. I mean, the example that we worked through was COVID, and COVID was an entirely predictable event. and yet a lot of people just thought that was a complete sort of shock around it. And I think this is again some of the things as leaders we've got to start to rethink about how we lead our organizations.
When you say a highly predictable event, do you predicate that on, previous epidemics, or do you think that these kind of global shifting events are just par for the course? Like, how do you see that as highly predictable?
Well, I mean, if you look at the last sort of global pandemic that we had, and the human one, the Spanish flu back in sort of 1918, since then we've had a number of sort of minor ones, mainly related to sort of animal.
Like mad cow or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, on the balance of sort of probability, it wasn't going to take too much for that leap to sort of be made. And actually, we have as I say, the COVID virus that sort of came through. And I don't know about yourself, but it feels like, as we've now emerged from this, it feels like a distant memory when, we all had to leave the office. You weren't able to go out to the shops. We had to wear masks, all of this sort of thing. And yet, yes, there's lots of people, unfortunately, have lost their lives around that. But, the human race as such has sort of survived that. And there are organizations who, through innovation, have spotted the opportunities and have built businesses and services on the back of these sort of tragedies that sort of come to us. And I think, I don't know, probably the same in the US. We have this big clamor that we need more data. We need more data. Traditionally, data is a lag measure. You only get data after something has actually happened.
Right.
So, it can give you a steer on where things might go, but ultimately, we're collecting more and more data. And I think what I'm sort of acutely conscious of, I was reading there's 2.5, I can't remember how the exact number, but trillion megabits of data that's out there, and less than 1% of it actually gets analyzed, because we don't have the people, we don't have the skills to be able to go in and sort of look at these things. And what does that sort of mean for us? Well, actually, it means we've got an inflationary cost in our business, because if you think about it, the best data is the data that is closest to the event where it's actually happened. The closer you get to that activity with the data, the more useful it is. Probably once you get beyond about 6 months is what I've sort of experienced. Once the data is older than 6 months, basically it's not much use. It's just an inflationary cost in your business. And if you continue to collect this, your costs are just going up and up and up, and it's there. And yet we've been fed this. You've got to have the data. You've got to have the data. And I think we lose sight of that, and also lose sight of the fact for us as humans as well, that actually we've got good core instincts about things. And what we're good at, and this is where the storytelling comes back in it as well, is we're good at capturing narrative. You go out and have conversations with people, and you have that in a social situation or in a business situation, or even if you just sit and observe it, you will see and hear things, and basically you'll make the invisible visible as a result of listening to these things. And I think what human capacity is very good at is being able to spot the opportunities within that and say, actually, yeah, I've heard that, I'm picking up some sentiment here. Actually, there might be an issue here, there might be an opportunity here, there might be a need here. And again, this is where I think organizations can take a lead on it. But one of the points you raised about failure, I'll come back to that because I don't think I answered it properly. And again, this comes back to the way that we are rewarded. We have reward systems, performance appraisals. We're back onto that one, whereby you are seen as good if your performance rating, your RAG ratings, your red, amber, green is in the green. You can be managing perfectly effectively and basically not doing a great deal and keeping everything in the green. And, I have seen examples whereby the innovation team has come to a manager and say, oh, look, I can save you 5%. 5% of your costs in that here, but basically your RAG rating is going to be in the amber or the red for the next sort of 9 months. And it then goes into a position, well, actually, yeah, but I've got our bonus coming up, or I've got our performance appraisal coming up. I need my figures to be in the green. In which case, I then say, no, can you just hold that? And we miss so many opportunities. And if you think about, where did the learning come from? Whenever we're doing things, the learning comes from not from falling over. We're falling over all the time. That's the failure bit. It's the getting back up again. And how did you get back up, and how quickly did you get back on your feet and start running again? And I think, you know, from a leadership point of view, I would love it if exec teams were, I won't say sort of open to failure, but sort of managed risk, managed experimentation. That means that when you're running things, you know, you're quite quickly able to take a decision and say, actually, yeah, that's got potential. Let's move that on to the next stage. Or actually, no, that's just not good, but we've done that work, put it on the shelf, and actually we might come back to it. Because again, something else I've picked up over the last sort of few years is actually innovation. A lot of innovation is just about timing.
Yeah, I mean, but we're also, I mean, in all fairness, right? I mean, loving our innovators as we do, there's a point where you say basta, right? I mean, there is a point where you go, okay, you guys have been iterating, supposedly innovating, experimenting, and there's so much learning, right? Thanks for all the data, to your point, that you've created as a result. But knowing when to say stop, right, is also is part of that process. In an ideal world, we'd all be the Edisons with the 10,000 tries at making the light bulb, right? I don't know how many corporate executives are still willing to give Edison 10,000 tries.
Well, no, we wouldn't, because that's how businesses are now built and sort of operated around this. I was fortunate last year. We took a group of members across to Seattle, and we spent time inside the headquarters of Amazon and Microsoft, two very, very different businesses culturally, but they did share some common sort of traits around this. And you've probably heard about we want to be a day one business at Amazon, which is, we always want to be thinking and the mindset of an entrepreneur. And actually, if somebody's going to come and put us out of business, what do we sort of need to do that? And I think, innovation is something that it's not just for Christmas. It's something that needs to be with the business for life. And it needs to be embedded, and people need to know where it actually sort of sits. Because again, you've got various different iterations of it. You've got, everybody's responsible for innovation, and actually we've got an innovation team. And there are various schools of thought about what works. But in my experience, the ones that work best are where the innovation team is a support service that is able to, work with the various operational teams who've identified their pain points, what's keeping them awake at night, and are then able to sort of sit down with them and say, right, we're going to take you out of the business for X number of weeks, and we're going to work on this problem. We're going to apply some of these various different innovation tools, and then the ones that we work, we're going to put them back into the organization and then test them out. And then if they're safe, then we'll actually scale them. That's the ideal way to. That's what we would do with mechanics and sort of physical products like that. So why can't we do that with the systems and the processes?
This idea is always interesting to me. I remember talking with the head of innovation at Lufthansa. This was many years ago. And I said, tell me a little bit about the innovation program. And she said, we were abject failures for the first 5 years. Everything that we tried to do died. I said, so run me down the list. What are some of the things that you've tried that were absolutely useless? She said, we thought we were venture capitalists. We started there. So we thought, we know aviation better than anyone else. Let's invest in brilliant startups and get on the boards of these companies. We'll get a first peek into some of their ideas. We'll have first dibs if we want to invest in these companies. She's like, turns out we know nothing about venture capital investing and the high rate of failure among VCs, and trying to bring that idea back to stakeholders. So that's step 2. We thought we could run a startup program. We'd create this accelerator where we would invite young and aspiring aviators and anyone who was involved in wanting to get a plane off the ground and making those processes better. Like, turns out we're not good mentors to startups because we're so giant. Anytime a startup wanted to do something with any of our team members, there would be 30 people CC'd on an email, and nobody would move on anything because it wasn't part of their day-to-day. And the list went on and on of all the things. We set up an innovation house that was an island off in the middle of nowhere, so nobody would kill our ideas. And then finally, the last piece is we turned innovation back on the business, and we went to business line leaders and said, where are you dying? Where can we help you? Tell us the problem. We will go find other problem solvers to help us with that. And then You must be the evangelical, absolutely crazed champion of working together with this startup, this grown-up, this partner, this internal resource to make it happen. And we will call that innovation, as we're solving your problem in a way that you couldn't solve it on your own. And as a result of that, they wound up generating one of the best innovation programs in aviation. But it was so, I mean, even the innovation program was an exercise in trial and error, and I was just so enthused to hear her readily admit, just how challenging and agonizing it was just to even conceive of innovation inside of a large organization.
Absolutely, and to be given the opportunity, to be given 5 years in which to sort of find that out, there's
To
not
screw it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I know when we've been into Google before, and I think I had a few years back, I met a guy called Dan Cobley, who was head of prototyping at Google, which was obviously
Not
their
prototyping, predotyping.
prototyping. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly. And he was telling me that, they worked on a 90% failure rate. And the reason why they could work on such a high failure rate was simply because, they had so much going through. And, you only needed 10 of those 100 organizations or ideas to come to fruition. And what these big businesses I've observed are really good at is scaling. When they find something that works, they're able to scale it to, phenomenal size and at a phenomenal sort of pace around that, which I don't think many other organizations are able to sort of do. But I mean, you imagine taking a business case to say, right, I want to set up an innovation team and, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be coming back and reporting on failure to you. It takes a brave board to invest in that. And another thought as well around, as I say, when you're talking about organizational change, and this is about the use of consultants. I think we use consultants probably in the wrong way. And I know consultants get a bad press and things like that, but go with me on this one. The best people who know about the business are the people who do the work. And yet, we persist on, we'll bring consultants in to do things to you, right, rather than sort of with you kind of thing. And it sort of occurred to me that actually the role of consultants coming in, unless you need some really specialist technical knowledge and things like that, the best way to actually do it is, don't even start a transformation program. And I think I was reading some report by, I think it was PwC, that something like 78% of large-scale transformation programs end in disappointment. I wouldn't get on a plane if it only had a 22% sort of chance of reaching the other end. So why would you do that with thousands of people in an organization around this? And I think part of this is actually you get consultants in to backfill the posts and the roles of the people who do the work, who you then taking out to work with the innovation team to solve the problem. So they keep the business as usual going. And the people who know the job, they know their issues, they know the pain points, they're the ones who work with the innovation team to test and iterate and solve the problems. And once that works, as I say, they go back into the business. And I think those, for me, are the programs that I've seen that the sort of are the stickiest, that last, that leave the most positive impact on people. Otherwise, you just end up with sort of change fatigue. All right, there's another change program coming around the corner. And, people's resistance to that just lowers and lowers each time.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Ian, I think this has just been a fascinating conversation. I want to leave my audience with maybe some of your suggestions and ideas. You've been in innovation for a really long time. You've assembled communities of like-minded but disparate skilled, disparate leveled people inside of an organization, from CEO down to operations people. You've been on the corporate side, and you are also in the social housing space, interacting with government, right? Interacting with private sector folk, with communities in deep, deep need. Can you give us some takeaways of running communities of innovators, especially at the top of the year, who are in need of finding community where they can share ideas? What are some of the things that our listeners can do to find community, establish community? Why do they need this community, do you think?
Well, it's what I said earlier on, you are not alone. You're not alone in this, in terms of, going to trying to get to sleep at night worrying about sort of problems. And I intrinsically believe that in human nature, we like to help others. And if somebody reaches out and asks you and says, look, I've got this real problem, you know, if you ask in the right way, invariably there will be people who will help. And, you know, that's where some of the platforms that have been built over the last sort of few years are absolutely brilliant for that. LinkedIn, from a professional perspective, you post something on there and invariably somebody will say, yeah, I can help you around that. I think the second thing is be absolutely ruthless with your time. It is really the only resource that you've got. So don't waste it. And very quickly, you know, assess, make a judgment whether somebody is not the right person, i.e. they're an energy taker rather than an energy giver, and don't waste any time on it. You know, you might feel bad about it for the first few times that you do it, but, you know, after you've done that a while, you'll know, actually, I'll be far more effective if I'm just able to concentrate without having to spend lots of time in conversations and not actually building anything. And I think, you know, the point to sort of leave people with is, a good friend of mine, sort of Nick Walkley, sort of always used the phrase, critics build nothing, right? And it's very, very easy to criticize things. And I always try and make sure if I'm not happy with something, that actually I'll build something else as an alternative. And it's so true, you know, and in innovation, you know, innovation is a brilliant community. It's a brilliant space to inhabit because you're looking at the new, things are moving at a pace. And ultimately, you should be about building new things. And if that's, you know, the way that your mind works, then, you know, you've got a real good community in which to work and to share and to learn from.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to ask you now the 3 questions I ask every guest on my show, which is, what do you think, Ian, greatest innovation of all time?
Oh, the greatest innovation of all time. Oh, I've been asked this one before, and greatest innovation of all time. Oh, gosh. I wish I'd known about these in advance because I could have given you something really, but
that's why we call it the hot seat.
The hot seat, yeah, but I don't want to just be boring and say, oh yeah, it was my iPhone or something.
It was like my iPhone.
yeah, it's not that. It was me Dyson or something like that. And I don't know. I'll come back to that one. I'll give that a thought. But go with question 2 then. Go with question 2.
Okay, if you had the opportunity to join any innovation team where you would have loved to have had your hand in creating something amazing, what innovation team would you have loved to have joined?
All right, this is an easy one. There's a social enterprise charity across here in the UK called Change Please. Okay, Change Please was established by a young guy who worked in the fintech sector, who every day saw problems with homelessness in the environment where he was. And basically what they were going past people who were basically on the street who were begging. And he thought, actually, I can do better than this. And what did he come up with? Tell you what, we'll develop the concept of the mobile baristas. So instead of that person being sat on the street begging in all weathers around that, basically they took them, they housed them, they skilled them up, they gave them a mobile barista van, right? And instead of people going into Starbucks and Costa and all of these other places to buy their morning coffee, right, they now buy it from this barista who just a few months before was probably, say, living on the street, now making a living. They've got housing, they've got support, and they're no longer sort of dependent on the state for their livelihood. The transformation that innovation does to people's well-being, motivation, and just general health is absolutely phenomenal. And I love what they've done. And I love the fact that they've scaled. And I love the fact that they're also Sir Richard Branson's Innovation and Entrepreneur of the Year as well. And that's a real one that's really stuck with me.
Fantastic. And so the last question is, if there's something that makes you nuts, makes you crazy, or something you just wish existed in the world, what do you wish would be innovated or invented?
Invented around that. I wish there was something that could just help me cook, right? Because I just wish there was something that would just skill me up in this particular area, because, as I say, I can do a few things pretty well and I can do a lot of things averagely, but my word, even burning things in a microwave, I can sort of do that sort of thing. I can burn water. I'm that sort of skilled in that area, and it's always something. I'm a great admirer of people who are creative, particularly in the sort of the food industry, and I would love to be able to do that better. And coming back to your other question around, what's my sort of favorite innovation? I genuinely, I know I'm going to hold this up, but the impact that a technology company around Apple and what they've sort of done with the iPhone and things like that was to design and build something that actually had not been done before, or had never been done in that vein before. And I just really admired the way that they took something and gave us something that actually we didn't even know that we needed until we had it. And I think they've done that brilliantly as a business. Whether you like them or not, I thought they've really done that. I'm sure somebody will come along and disrupt them, and there'll be something else in the future around that. But for now, I think that's something that sort of really sticks with me. And, it's something I use every day, and I enjoy it. But it's been an absolute pleasure being on your show, Susan. Thank you very much for inviting me, and hopefully we can do more storytelling into the future.
Absolutely. Ian, where can people find you when they want to connect with the Disruptive Innovators Network?
Well, it depends if I owe them money or not. I don't really want them to do that, but you can go on our website, the disruptiveinnovatorsnetwork.co.uk, and they'll be able to find out what we do there. I'm reasonably active on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to find me sort of personally, but just best you watch out for us, because we will pop up wherever we find there's good innovation going on. So if you're innovating out there and you're doing something to solve some of society's big problems, chances are we'll be tracking you down, and just like the A-Team, we'll find you.
Nice. We'll find you. Thanks, Ian. Thank you for being my guest today on the Innovation Storyteller Show. Please connect with Ian online, and have a great day.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.